Good afternoon. Welcome to the first Training Initiative webinar. We'll be running these webinars on a monthly basis. Today, our focus is neurodiversity in the workplace and the advantages of embracing inclusion and diversity within your workforce. I'm joined with some esteemed guests from across the country. I've got Emma Kearns, Director for UK, Ireland and Europe at Rangam, a recruitment agency supporting with specifically supporting neurodiverse individuals into work placements. Helen Brazington, General Manager at PI-KEM Limited. Christopher Golby, Director at Lumien. And Laura Hateley, a specialist tutor here at the Training Initiative. I'm Ben Calvert-Lyons. I'm Director of Partnerships and Engagement here at the Training Initiative. And I think we're probably ready to go. Before I introduce everyone, just to say hello. If you have any questions, please feel free to add those. And we will come to them at the end. We're hoping to leave about 15 minutes at the end to answer any questions from any of our audience. So I'm just going to ask each of my guests just to say a brief hello and tell you a little bit about what they do. Emma, can I start with you?
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. So, Ben, thank you so much for inviting us along today. We're very, very excited to be part of this. This is my first ever LinkedIn Live. So trying to make no mistakes, there can be no editing. So I am the Director for UK, Ireland and EMEA here at Rangam. And essentially, Rangam's kind of values, missions, is to ensure that employment opportunities are accessible and inclusive to everybody. We recognise that there's these great talents and strengths within the neurodivergent and disabled community out there that employers are just missing out on, usually due to inaccessible recruitment practices, styles, or inaccessible support. So we work with many clients globally and across the UK and Ireland to support them to not only bring in and recruit neurodivergent and disabled talent, but actually retain that talent and support them to succeed and thrive. So it's very much a full process from end to end, ensuring that every single person has the adaptations and supports they need to bring their whole selves to work and feel, probably for the first time ever, that they feel in a perfectly comfortable and safe environment to really bring out their skills. And that's us really, Ben. There's loads I could probably talk about, and I'm sure there's loads of time after, so I won't take up too much time talking about Rangam now. Pass over to one of the other incredible panelists.
Thank you. And on my screen, we'll move across. So Laura, you're next.
Hello, I'm Laura and I'm a specialist tutor at the Training Initiative. So I work across all of our contracts. And I'm an apprenticeship tutor as well, and I am a neurodivergent tutor myself, and I work with obviously a multitude of learners, both neurodiverse and non.
Thank you, Laura. Chris, could you give us a brief introduction?
Yeah, just to reiterate what Emma said, thanks Ben for having us today. So I'm Chris. I'm from a company called Lumien. Basically, we're on a journey to make culture an actionable part of every board meeting. So realistically, we're here to try and offer what a chief people officer would offer in a larger organization down to a smaller organizations, running that through a combination of tech and a combination of consultancy and services that go into smaller organizations, really helping to make sure that culture makes a difference there. Often it gets lost somewhere between the CEO and the HR lead, and we're here to help really support that and make sure there's something really happening in creating those people first SME organizations.
Excellent. And finally, Helen.
Hello, everybody. I'm Helen. PI-KEM is a specialist company that sells advanced materials into universities. I'm on the panel because PI-KEM is very culturally focused on equity, diversity and inclusion. And I personally have close family members and friends that are on the autistic spectrum. And I also work with the Scout organisation, so a lot of youth members there that we have to think very carefully about diversity inclusion as well. So I've got a lot of personal experience as well that I bring to the workplace.
Great, thank you all. And just to sort of wrap it up, in my role as Director of Partnerships and Engagement, it's been really important to me that I know that we as the Training Initiative can support all the businesses we work with and all the employers and all their employees to ensure that we're maximising the development of talent for those workplaces. I myself have a background in as a special educational needs and disability teacher. I was a teacher for 20 years prior to this latest stage of my career. So this is a subject that's really close to my heart as well. Without further ado, let's get the discussion underway. Emma, I'd like to start with you. I wonder if you could talk to us a bit about how Rangam do support businesses and how you feel, why do businesses choose Rangam to come and support them with bringing in neurodiverse individuals into the workplace? What's the impact of that?
That is a big question, Chris. Ben, sorry, I was looking at Chris on the screen. That's huge. So I would say the first things first with Rangam and definitely in the team over here, we are all neurodivergent ourselves. So I think we definitely bring that lived experience to everything we do. We've all experienced challenges in the workplace, and usually those challenges aren't because people don't want to make adaptations or team members, managers, are purposefully doing the wrong thing and don't recognize our talents and strengths that we bring. It's usually based on a lack of effective training, a lack of effective resources, coaching, guidance, mentoring from managers, colleagues, and the employees to have everything that they need. And that's really where Rangam comes in. And I think that's where we can make that real difference to businesses. So it is probably three key functions that we talk to about businesses focusing on when they're looking at hiring neurodivergent or disabled talent into their business. One is looking at the culture that already exists. So if you're going to successfully hire and retain the talent from the neurodivergent community in your business, you have to have a culture of listening, and not just listening, actually hearing. Because we talk a lot about, listening to people's experiences, but listening and hearing are two very, very different things. So really having that open culture where people can have open, honest discussions, where they feel like they're being heard and they feel like changes are being made. The second is thinking about who you probably, I'm going to say 3, but my ADHD brain will probably go through about 10. So apologies if people are expecting me to only say 3 and then you're on number 30 by now. But the second one is really around, thinking about, and it comes with the culture, thinking about who you probably already have in your business. So we know diagnostic rates do not really reflect the true diagnostic figure out there of the neurodivergent community. And the likelihood is when business says they're about to start embarking on their neurodivergent journey, they're probably already in their neurodivergent journey. They've probably already got a large proportion of their workforce that is neurodivergent themselves, either diagnosed, self-diagnosed, disclosed, not disclosed. So when you start setting that culture up, the second stage that you get from that is people talking more freely about being neurodivergent themselves, or having family members. So like Helen mentioned, this is why she's so committed to this sector of work, is because most people will have a family or personal connection with neurodivergence when you start having those conversations. The next phase then is thinking about what's our accessibility like. And I'm not just talking about environmental accessibility, because that's one part of the bigger picture, but where are the skills that we require in the organization? How then accessible are our job descriptions that we put out there? Where do we promote our jobs? Are we even going to find people within the neurodivergent community if we continue promoting the jobs in the same way that we're doing? What am I on? 3. So I think I've got 5 actually. So the 4th one is then training. So really, really important to ensure that you have, I say the word robust, but robust sounds really scary, but really effective training that fits your business. So, you know, it's really good to have a foundational knowledge of neurodivergence that everybody has that works within your business to understand, you know, the challenge, some of the benefits and the strengths base of neurodivergent talent. But then thinking about where else are you going to need training? So manager training is really important to help understand how you bring the best out of your teams. The other thing we do within Rangam for businesses is to support businesses to train up their internal ecosystems of support. The purpose of our job is if I do my job well and the team does their job well, we shouldn't be in a job in 10 years' time. We want to create that sustainability and the scalability of support that businesses start to do business as usual. And when we think about the things that when you start on your neurodivergent journey and you start looking at accessibility and inclusion, that benefits the whole. You create better managers, you create better people in the business because people are thinking of every person they meet, what does this person need, rather than this is how we do things and we're going to always continue doing it that way. So sorry, Ben, I think I probably talked for quite a long time there and, you know, touched on a few bits, but hopefully that does answer your question.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, please don't apologize, Emma. That was great. Really, really powerful stuff. And I think it's interesting that you're talking about sort of getting different voices, different modes of different perspectives. I think that's kind of, Chris, if I could ask you to come in at this point, that's probably really key to the work you do with Lumien when you're working with businesses. That idea of bringing in a holistic view from everybody in the workforce to identify how to create an effective culture in a business. Yeah,
critical, really critical. It's really interesting listening to what you said, Emma, as well about it. Interestingly, I was at an event at the University of Derby yesterday doing a presentation, and one of the questions I asked the audience, and I like to ask sometimes, is what is culture in the first place? Because it's a term we tend to, you know, we band it about a lot, and we sort of have this misdemeanor that we all understand and have the same meaning of that word. And it's interesting to ask, because when you take culture outside of the workplace, which it does exist outside the workplace, I always say to people, if 2 people met in a church for the first time, or 2 people met in a restaurant for the first time, and you could replicate their first meeting, the interactions between them and what happened after that would be different. And inherently, you're already getting a culture between these 2 people, and that's starting to form. And the way they behave afterwards will then be different. And so that's just in a setting where 2 people have met for the first time. But what happens if you've got that with loads of different people in a company going on and different tasks? And inherently, culture becomes, when you step it into organizational culture, is about bringing those cultural elements into the workplace. Every company, you can get companies that do very similar tasks, produce very similar outcomes, but will go about it in their own different ways. And the culture is really about how we go about getting things done around here. And that's an important part of it. So the way the people interact to produce the best results is really critical. And understanding that culture piece, I think, is important. And then saying, okay, well, there is no right or wrong answer to this. It's just about how we behave and how we get things done. And we need to find the best ways of dealing with different people and dealing with ways of doing that, and focusing on being with people and bringing your whole self to work. I think it's really interesting then, because when it comes to neurodiversity, you can really bring that into play and say, well, we don't need to be the same as any other organization. We can be different and find different ways of working. And it's just about how we go about getting things done. And when we move through different iterations, that allows us to achieve that. And we can practice that and do this in our own way. And adding in that diversity element can really allow you to achieve that. And when I talk about culture as a whole as well, I often like to use this analogy, which I think is quite nice, which is about designing an original piece of music, or creating an original piece of music. So you can't expect to pick up a guitar having never played music before and be in the charts the next week. I think we can all accept that, right? We've all heard some bad musicians in our times, but you also can't pay to be a grade 8 musician and expect to be the next Ed Sheeran playing on Radio 1 next week. There's an element of creativity there. So you've got this classic structural element to it that exists and is common across all music, common across all companies in terms of culture. Are there breaks? Are they in the right place? We're not emailing people at 3 a.m. asking for tasks. All these sort of standard elements that need to come into play. But then there's what's unique to us within that organization, and what makes us special and different from the other organizations, and how we push that and how we promote that forwards. And I think Dylan's got a couple of slides I was going to ask him to put up, if that's okay. And I think, yeah, I've just asked for a couple of slides here. So I think it's really critical in these two layers to think about this. So it's really important that we understand as a whole what's going on across an organization. So to capture data around well-being, in particular one for me, well-being around diversity, around engagement, to make sure we've got an understanding from an unbiased point of view of the data of what's going on. So we're getting a fair representation of where there may be problems around the organization and where we need to address them. And if we just flick to the next slide, I feel like I'm back in COVID times asking for this. So this is a little, an image I like to talk about a bit when I'm talking about culture again. Every organization contains these 3 circles. So at the center of it, we've got purpose. So this is our mission, our vision, our values, how we drive those ethics through an organization. Then we come into the cultural piece, which is around really creating that employee environment and that employee experience. And then onto how we treat the individual well-being of people within that environment. And it can be quite often lost. I mean, this is where the real uniqueness of an organization comes into play, because there's too many people who try to replicate other organizations and don't try to be individual. And when they tap into the well-being of staff, they really only tap at surface level. So this is where we say, what's wrong? And they say, oh, you know, we don't really eat that healthily, so we'll get a fruit bowl. And the fruit bowl's moldy in the corner within a couple of weeks. Or we're experiencing high stress and we get the pool tables and the ping pong tables, and everybody wants to be the next Google, right? Because this is where it starts to play out. But realistically, that's where you get this kind of superficial change angle. And what we want to do is make sure we are really understanding our core principles as an organization, understanding our purpose of why we're there in the first place, and then looking at that employee environment, employee experience, and then looking at the experience of those individuals coming into that environment, supporting individual well-being and allowing people to bring their whole selves to work, and giving people that more interactive approach. I talk about it as being sort of freedom within a framework. We're not in an age anymore where here's your 9-to-5 job, you may have to work an extra hour, here's your list of benefits. We're in an age where we need to add more flexibility. And I think in creating that overlying structural view, that data back view at the top level, where we can really understand what is needed structurally, but then allowing for that extra creative element to come through underneath and really speaking to people and understanding how we support the individual well-being of people can be really powerful. And then allowing that to allow different types of thinking and different types of elements to be brought into the workplace to support that, but really focusing on getting that balance right in that individual aspect.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, I love that. Some really, I've scribbled all over. I've made lots of notes there while you're talking. But thing that I guess 2 things that really stick with me there. One is that key aspect that you're talking about, the kind of the well-being of individuals is key to the culture being successful and being real, really. And I suppose that links back to what you were saying, Emma, about needing to really understand the individuals and enabling those individuals, empowering individuals to feel that they can speak up about what does work for them or doesn't work for them. And that's all kind of bound up in that idea of culture. I mean, what I've put here is, you know, taken from what you're saying there, Chris, and leading on from Emma, that culture it's not a static thing. It's not like you don't just say this is our culture. Really, culture is a fluid, almost a living, breathing entity of interaction, and therefore it's continually changing. So we can want to affect and we can impact a culture, but we have to continually work, and we've got to continually feed it almost. And the way that we feed it is by maintaining those lines of communication, maximizing that, I guess, embracing the uniqueness and the individuality that we have in the teams, and bringing everyone in to interact together and try and bring that onto a level playing field. Yeah, great. So it feels to me that this is a perfect time, Helen, for perhaps you to come in and talk to us about the culture there is in PI-KEM, and how you've gone about that, because I know it's a really fantastic workplace culture you have there.
Yeah, I'm sitting here smiling away because everything I'm hearing really resonates with me, and I'm sitting thinking about PI-KEM, and actually I do feel we're unique because we try very hard to get this right. The reason we embrace it is because of our culture and our values, and we don't use them as business buzzwords. They are actually something that means something to everyone at PI-KEM. So our values are pride, accountability, and inquisitiveness, and they're very strong on our customer side. So obviously pride, we want to do well for the customer. Accountability is we've got to get things right. Inquisitiveness is we work with scientists and researchers, we've got to understand what they're doing. But on the flip side, they also resonate for us as the team at PI-KEM. So we want to have pride in the company and what the company means. And it is more than just the salary and the wages and the dividends for the directors. It's actually benefiting everybody. So we take pride that PI-KEM can give something back to the team, to the wider community, and to everyone that we can possibly help. And we're not a charity, we are a business, but we try very hard. So I was thinking about that and sitting here smiling because everything everybody's saying is really resonating with me, and I think it's made me happy to work for PI-KEM again. So thank you, guys. So yeah, from a company point of view, we really see the benefits of embracing neurodiversity, equity, inclusiveness, everything. We find it helps with our recruitment. We find it helps with retention of staff, the stability of staff. I'm just looking at my notes as I'm talking. The team cohesion, if everybody understands each other and how we all work differently, we actually can collaborate much better. So there's that understanding. It helps to reduce errors. If we understand how different people approach tasks differently, we can reduce the errors because we can work with them to approach those tasks in a way that is suitable for them. We do have processes. Obviously, we're an ISO company, and a lot of things are a standard framework we've got to work to. But actually, if you're looking at one screen to do something rather than another, because that suits you better, we can do that. So there's those benefits as well, just reducing errors, helping to reduce the barriers to people having opportunities as well. That helps the company. And in the company review, we always do a yearly 360 type review. Just knowing that we're going to get some different thought processes on what's going on in the company really gives us some different thinking, and allows us to see things and the opportunities in a new way that maybe as a leadership team we perhaps haven't thought of before. So there's lots of benefits to why we embrace this. It not only benefits the company, but it benefits everybody in the company. And I think because we've grown up over 30 years from a very small company to you've got 30 employees now, to sort of a bit bigger small company, I think we've been able to just change steadily and think about what we're doing every step of the way. And that's why it's working for us at the moment. One of the notes I wrote down was, how do we achieve it as a small company? And it is just the small changes in the thought processes. Emma said earlier about listening to people, and I think it's listening. It's also watching and paying attention as well, and thinking about things again differently. So if something's gone wrong, really thinking about that person and why it's gone wrong, and not just necessarily saying you haven't followed the process, but thinking about how they've done something. We recently had some goods that were supposed to go out. There was a problem with them, so we do have an area where they're supposed to go, but they didn't get put there. But then the next day, they were getting ready to be shipped again. Well, the process is if the goods are on the bench, they get shipped, and some of our staff are quite black and white in that regard. So they were doing what they thought was the best thing. So we really, rather than actually telling them they'd done it wrong, we really had to think about what's going on here. Why are they shipping goods that don't need to be shipped? For me, I'd understand fully the goods weren't ready to be shipped and would have not done it. But for somebody else, they were following a black and white process, and that's their journey at PI-KEM. So it's things like that. There's a lot of focus. We use the word equity now rather than equality, because I think it's not just for people that might be neurodivergent or anything else like that. It's actually for all the staff. Everybody's probably got a little bit of something that they like to do things differently, or it feels more comfortable to them, whether they've got autism or any other kind of broadness of issues. So yeah, we like to focus on the person and really look at them and realise that one fit isn't for everybody, that we have to actually give each person the tools that suit them to make them succeed. And we can do that through training notes that are clearer, or training notes that include more pictures. It's all just thinking about the little things and just making small changes. Hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it certainly does. It certainly does. Yeah. Thank you, Helen. Actually, it's making me think, Laura, about the changes we've gone through with our apprenticeship programs in the last 12 months, and we've put a lot more focus into supporting individuals with neurodiversity, with educational requirements, and I think we've recognised that by making some tweaks and changes, there's been a benefit to delivery as a whole. I mean, you're by far the expert on this. I'll hand over to you, Laura.
Thanks, Ben. I think I was actually going to cut in just as Ben started talking, because you made the point about it, it isn't one size fits all, and that literally hit the nail on the head. I think it very much is the case of, it's not just about whether you fit into a company or an organisation. It is very much so, does that organisation fit in with you? And I think, adaptions and things like that, yes, a lot of the time, they do help. They do have that support, and they have those great outcomes and benefits. But it isn't always the case, and we have to be obviously realistic about that and totally honest. I feel like I am one of the lucky ones, because I am very much in an environment where there has been that investment, and there has been that investment not just with the people that we work with in terms of our learners, but also our staff and the company as a whole. And when I say about kind of investment, I don't just mean the financial investment. I mean in terms of learning, in terms of training, tools, resources, conversations, as a whole package. And I think that's what's really important. Dylan, if you just pop up the first slide for me, please.
While Dylan's just going to say that, just following on from something that Helen said that you've linked to there, that idea of the investment side, but culture grows from us as employees recognizing, or as work colleagues recognizing, that we've got time for each other, and we want to understand each other, and we want to try and support. So yeah, it's so key, those aspects aspect.
It
So
is about giving
I'll leave you to-
time. Yeah, just giving a little bit of time each day really does help.
No, it does. And that time in itself is investment.
Yeah.
And passionate about this, as you can tell. Yeah, the image on that you can see on the screen now is very much my brain, how my brain kind of is inside. So yeah, when I mention about investment, I kind of think of it as kind of a three-stager. So we invest in the staff, and then the benefit of that goes on to kind of the planning, the creation, and then into the implementing with the delivery. So I've kind of, see it in those three stages. In terms of investing with the staff, I myself, as I said, I'm neurodivergent. I have combined ADHD, and I was actually a real late diagnosis. I was 34, and I feel, as well as benefiting me, my diagnosis and kind of the awareness now, and me learning, about me and everything else surrounding that, I feel has actually really had a benefit within the business as well, and kind of my role within the business, because I didn't get that support through education. It was very much pointed out in terms of, on my school reports, certain traits that were being picked up on, being called quirky for certain things. Throughout, primary, secondary, further, higher education. But then it was only last year when actually kind of all came to a head, and I got that diagnosis. And I've always, even before that came around, I've always had that want to help and support, which a lot of people that I work with, a lot of my colleagues here at TTI have also had, hence why we do what we do. And I think for me, it was very much about, I wanted to be in a company and working for an organisation that had the culture that I was seeking, I wanted, that would I would fit into even before I'd had my diagnosis. And then it's only kind of obviously since that, more kind of adaptations, which I can kind of mention shortly, have happened kind of off the back of that. But there was actually a lot of that in place already, where I already had quite a lot of the support that I did actually need, just off the back of what the kind of organisation were already doing and already implementing themselves anyway. And the same with kind of our learners as well. So there was a lot of investment already in terms of mandatory training, making sure everyone was trained in equality and diversity, the safeguarding vulnerable adults, and then also the open conversations. There was already a lot of that going on. So we had a lot of kind of team bonding and building, open conversations about people, if they needed support with certain things, if there needed to be any adjustments. We were already investing in, those that might have needed reasonable adjustments in terms of additional screens and other different forms of software and equipment and devices as well. And that was kind of prior to obviously my diagnosis last year. So yeah, we were already kind of implementing a lot of things, and we are a disability confident employer as well. So our recruitment process has always been quite thorough, very much obviously about equality, equal opportunities, non-bias. But I think since that, so kind of moving on from more conversations that came from not just me, but other individuals that have had diagnosis since I've joined the company, there has been a lot more conversations and a lot more development on top of what we already had. I think the basic was there, which is what's important. If you haven't got that basis, the point of that image on the screen, you can see all of those jigsaw pieces, and that is because that is literally my thought. If the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle can't come together and can't piece together, how are you meant to achieve and how are you meant to get that success? The tutors, the organisation, the learners, all the support and reasonable adjustment, if it can't work alongside each other, then how are you going to get the outcome that you want? And so I think all of those things that we do with the staff and within the organisation, we then implement into the other sides of the business. So the learners, the people that we work with, the organisations that we work with. And I think them seeing what we do, and the benefits in terms of, the comments that have been made about the work that we do with the learners, the success the learners are having, the benefits they're having on the businesses in terms of, being creative, problem solving, thinking outside the box, that attention to detail, all those great qualities that our learners who have, those groups of learners are neurodiverse are bringing to the companies, and that we're honing in on when we're working with them on their apprenticeships through all the different, tools, techniques and support that we give. I think it's very much clear to the people, to kind of outsiders, the impact that that's having. And we are getting questions, us as tutors, we are questioned on what do you do as an organisation, what tools are you using. And I mean, a prime example of that, actually, Ben will be aware of this, but we've actually internally, one of our directors has actually created a document that is a Future Leaders Unlocking Potential Guide that kind of workplaces and learners have access to, that has got, loads of suggestions of things that we've done, different software, templates, strategies, tools, information and guidance. So we're able to then, help other people through the tools and the things we do as an organisation. And yeah, I don't want to kind of go into, there's something, I'll touch upon a bit later on, so I don't want to go into it too much now, but I think a lot of the impact for us personally with our learners comes from the initial process. So not just the teaching. I think without the initial stuff, the teaching wouldn't be successful. I think when you look at the plan section that you can see on the screen now, all of those things, the IAG, the initial assessments that we do, to identify those strengths, to see where those areas of development are, to gain the knowledge of the prior learning, what's their short, medium and long-term goals, but collaborating. So what's the organisation's short, medium and long-term goals, as well as the aspirations of the learners that we're working with. And that all needs to be brought together. So in creating our individual training plans for every individual learner through that collaborative way, the only way in which the delivery can be successful is if that collaboration initially, in that build-up, in that onboarding process, if that's a success and all those jigsaw pieces fit together, well, then that will, have a knock-on effect on the delivery, because those strategies are in place, those tools are in place. So yeah, I think that the planning, the prep, that all needs to be in place first in terms of, kind of our role as tutors and in education and in the workplace, before we can then make sure and be confident that it's going to have that impact and success on the learners and in our delivery.
Great, thank you, Laura. And by that, I guess you're saying that that kind of knowledge, those initial assessments, those early parts, is getting to know the business as a whole, getting to know what the business need is, what the role is, to then then getting to know the individual, and sort of marrying those needs together to understand how we can make most impact on the employee and the business as well.
Yeah, it's got to benefit everyone, hasn't it?
Yeah, Brill. Emma, it seems like a good time to bring you in.
Oh, sorry, I've just, you haven't spoken for a while, and you go to speak and you have to clear your throat. So I love, like, what everyone's saying. It really seems like, from a cultural aspect and from, achieving success, it's about acceptance, isn't it? It's about accepting that everybody is really different, that people will need different things, people will do different things in different situations. So for me, I really struggle with sitting still. So if I'm in this, if I'm always on panel, if I'm on panel discussions like this, if I'm talking, I can move a lot. So you'll always see my hands flying everywhere. But as soon as I'm listening, if anyone, people watching this, you've probably seen me moving quite a lot in my seat or looking down, doodling, because it's a way of stimming. So often if I'm in a meeting with somebody that doesn't necessarily know that I'm neurodivergent, because I've worked in this field for a long time, I've been learning about myself, I feel very confident and comfortable saying to someone, look, this is what happened, this is how I am, I don't mean anything by it. But not many people do feel like that, to be able to explain why they do things and how it helps, and what that means. So if I'm doodling in a meeting, that actually means I'm really listening to you. If I'm scrolling my phone as you're telling me something really important, it means I'm paying attention. It means all of that information's going in, because I need to free up the part of my brain that's saying, you've got to listen to this. This is really, really important, to be able to listen to it. So I have to do other things when I'm having to listen really importantly to people. But that comes from a sense of being able to talk about it, and it brings it back to that cultural acceptance, accepting of differences, talking to each other, learning about each other. I was on a training course recently, and somebody said we need to be curious. And I think that's what's missing a lot of the time, even from businesses that are doing things really, really well or really keen to do it. That element of curiosity seems to be lacking. And if we're not curious about each other, and we're not curious about finding out why people need certain things and what we can do differently to allow that, we'll never get to that point of cultural acceptance. And just my last thing as well, it was interesting what Chris was saying on his slide. I loved the first slide you did, Chris, that showed the metrics, because I think you had productivity in one corner and diversity there. Well, interestingly, I don't know whether you have these stats or it's something that could be gathered at a later date, because some businesses have done some research that shows actually having more diverse teams does increase productivity. So it'd be amazing, wouldn't it, to be able to see those metrics and to see, as diversity increased, productivity was also increasing as well. I loved your description that you gave, Chris, and I talk about it a lot like a car engine. Each part of that car engine will do something really differently to ensure that that engine and that car drives really smoothly and is effective. And that's what diversity of teams need to be. We don't all need to think the same. We don't all need to all be the same at a certain aspect of the role. We probably all need to be really, really different and bring our specialist skills to every element of what the team is doing to create that really slick delivery that increases those productivities. So I love that slide, and I loved hearing everybody. Everyone has such amazing insights and experiences. It's great.
Thank you, Emma. Yeah, I really like that you mentioned there, that idea of, if everyone's got the same point of view, if everyone's thinking in the same way, you're not really going to find new ways of solving problems that you're overcoming. The more diversity of thought there is within a team, the more likely you are of finding new and innovative ways of overcoming issues that you come across. But just another thing that some words you used there really brought me back to what Helen was saying as well. I mean, just a key thing there, the idea of by being able to understand those people that we work with or that work for us, if we're able to demonstrate to them that we want to understand them, when we do understand the situations they're in, we're helping to empower them and make them recognize that we want them to be different. We want to support them with that. And I suppose it comes back. I was just thinking of those three words you used at PI-KEM, Helen: pride, accountability, inquisitiveness. And you mentioned about the improved retention of staff through embracing uniqueness and supporting the workforce. I just wonder, do you notice a real impact on individual staff accountability and taking on responsibility when you're supporting them and helping them to recognize that you do embrace their differences?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is about trust. I use the example about somebody not following a procedure necessarily very well, because the procedure to them was black and white. And I think if we can show that we're not necessarily just getting the big stick out and telling them off, but actually we're trying to understand why they're doing something and what's happening with it, and actually get to the bottom of their individual personal performance and how they are. Then they will start trusting us, and they'll be able to come to us and actually be more open about, well, you know, this is how I need this to be for me, and or I need that to be for me. So that means they're going to be more engaged with the company, and the retention is going to be improved. And that can only be a good thing, because then they're going to learn more, they're going to do better for the company, and, you know, we're all going to flourish. So it is about the trust. And I think, as senior leaders, challenging each other, that what we're seeing and what we're experiencing with the team members isn't necessarily as straightforward as what we think it is. You know, if you're seeing somebody being grumpy, is that because they're having a bad day or they're not happy, or is it because there's something else going on? Maybe the work they're doing at that particular time isn't suiting them because the environment's too noisy, or, you know, or it's a bit too sunny and warm. There could, you know, just that challenge of what's going on here. And that, yeah, I think across the company as a whole, we've seen our retention rates improve significantly. I think when we ask the staff, they're a lot happier and settled than we've had staff previously that have come and gone. So yeah, it's a real benefit. It helps, and yeah.
Bro, thank you. Chris, I suppose that's a key aspect for Lumien, isn't it? When you're working with businesses, you want to, one of the aspects is supporting retention, you talked about well-being and staff morale.
Yeah, absolutely. And I kind of wanted to, I mean, the retention and recruitment piece, they come hand in hand really as well, trying to push through that correct employee value proposition and that correct employee brand and getting out there. I suppose reflecting back to Laura, what she said about finding the companies with the right culture and how much they're pushing that employer brand out there. Something I wanted to mention as well is what Emma said about pushing the statistics and driving that out there. We're not quite there with those statistics yet. we are certainly getting there. And another thing we're building on is actually forecasting tools that allow us to forecast what those changes will be like. We're working with Aston University on that and in research projects, because obviously a big driver behind what we're doing, and the point I wanted to make here was around the big changes are going to come when we can make this more scientific at C-suite level. So being able to pull these data and these statistics to say, there is a productivity difference here. We can show it in your organization, and we can really drive that forwards. And I think that for me is the next game-changing movement. I mean, hopefully we're trying as a company to do something about that. I don't think we're the only ones. We're pushing alongside the industry to try and get that. And I think pushing that forward is quite critical. And bringing that in, the other point I wanted to mention was about take into account, we can push that in board level about bringing inclusivity in, is really reflecting the differences in organization sizes of how and when you tackle that. Because there are certain stages in a company's growth where things change, but particularly two numbers that always strike for me are 10 and 30. And the way I try to explain this is, if you think about a restaurant and trying to book a restaurant for people to go out to for the evening for a meal, organizing anything under 10 people, relatively easy. You get your table together and you communicate between everyone in the group. You don't need many systems in place to do that. You start to get up to 25, 30, you need 2-3 tables, and you need a way of starting to communicate between those. But once it gets above 30, it becomes more complicated, because now you need a private room, and you start to move towards booking whole restaurants. And so you need systems and processes in place. And for me, this is a problem area, because between that 10 and 30 gap, it's quite often you find more neurodiversity. And as you start to move above that 30 gap, that can become a risk of those people being unheard. And you're getting unconscious bias in areas like this kicking in. So I think it's important to tell the story about this, but to also appreciate the different complexities between different size organizations and how they behave, and how to bring that in, think about that and those behaviors slightly differently, and to think it's okay to think about this, but why does it exist in the context of my organization? And I just wanted to bring that up. I don't know if anybody else has had any reflections on that or changes in stages of growth.
Do you know what, Chris? That just kind of made me think, when you said about the challenges in terms of numbers, you know, as numbers grow and different size organisations and things, it actually kind of resonated with me in terms of, we've kind of grown with how many, obviously, apprentices that we now kind of have and take on and deliver to. And as that growth has happened, we kind of, you know, we realised that we need a method, a strategy in terms of, you know, teaching to benefit them and their organisation that had something for everyone. As we said before, it's not one size fits all. And that's kind of when we actually started using the flipped learning model that we actually use now in terms of delivery. Because of the growth that we've had, and obviously needing to kind of reach all the learners and different types of learners, you know, differences that were coming on and different difficulties, wants and needs, etc. So with the flipped learning model, we've been able to, because it is quite structured, but it also offers the flexibility, because it's them kind of learning outside of the sessions with the tutor and then kind of being assessed within the session. So it's flipping the normal classroom, you know, delivery on its head. It's enabled for more flexibility, strangely, even though it's quite structured, but also more scaffolding, which we've actually had feedback saying that that's benefiting their role within the organisations, because we're taking very much an approach that is them discovering and exploring and implementing outside of kind of the classroom environment. So they're actually getting more involved with different areas of the business, which means that other people within the business and other departments are then having to obviously be accepting of that and having to adapt to that, whether it's, you know, reasonable adjustments, whether it's, you know, open conversations, more training, just having that basic understanding, whatever that might be. And kind of through this, the businesses are saying and the organisations are saying that they're gaining more awareness and knowledge around specific, you know, learning difficulties, neurodiversity, and they're able to see the impact that the individuals working with us through their apprenticeships are having on other colleagues, and the strengths that kind of coming away with them from working on an apprenticeship, you know, the flexibility, building the confidence, becoming more well-rounded as an individual, you know, the independence to it, and building those relationships. It actually means that as an organisation, they're becoming more well-rounded, and they're able to then identify where the gaps are within their organisation in terms of kind of what they need. So for their training, for their colleagues, like their internal training, other adjustments that they need to make, you know, for that diverse, well-rounded work environment. So yeah, we are actually, a lot of what you just said kind of resonated, because we're experiencing a lot of that, you know, and we're having to adapt to that ourselves in terms of the numbers that we're delivering to and the variety, but also, yeah, the organisations we're collaborating with, that the apprentices are working alongside, and seeing kind of how it's impacting them and the changes they're having to make as well.
And I suppose, you know, that helps to build into that perhaps how bigger organisations can look to gain understanding and development. Because, you know, going to on that point you were making, Chris, about the bigger an organisation, the more likely the uniqueness of individuals might get lost. I mean, and all training should be looking at trying to address that, shouldn't it? Well, that's or anything that's being advised to put in. And I think apprenticeships are a great example of where training, it's focused on an individual, but it's also really focused the kind of the assessment, the measurement of success is how impactful has that training been for the individual on the business. And continually throughout that learning journey, there's a line manager that is constantly in contact with the apprentice and with the academic tutor, and that's continually going. So there's a learning process for that line manager as well. And probably, you know, I'm sure, you know, Emma, you talked about the kind of the training aspects that you support businesses with. I know that's a key part of what you do as well with Lumien, Chris. I suppose if businesses are constantly thinking about addressing culture and making sure that they're on a micro scale, they're looking out for understanding the needs of their staff. On a macro scale, then they need to be thinking, how do they upskill their middle managers? How do they upskill their senior leaders to have that understanding? And if that's all in place, if that continual learning model is in place, then actually, as a business grows, as a company grows, that attention to detail that benefits that culture should grow with that.
Absolutely, from my point of view. And do you know, one of the things I wanted to mention is I find it very difficult to find anybody who's gone straight from a junior level member of staff through to CEO post-COVID. Right, I'm sure we can pretty much accept that timeline wise that's not been possible. And so for any C-suite member of staff, it's very difficult to appreciate what it is that a junior member of staff actually needs. Like, they've never really been in their shoes. They've never been used to 24-hour access to email, the hybrid working, the 4-day work weeks, everything that comes with it. Gen Z's coming into the workplace, everything around these areas. So how do we really get to understand that? And I think that the risk to organizations in that area is either the C-suite or the senior leaders trying to decide what the employees need. But alternatively, the same risk can be just thinking, we'll just ask them what they need, because that's the same risk as well, because they'll just tell you surface level items and you won't get the right answers you need. And you just scratch the surface and you end up with the superficial change I spoke about earlier. And so you have to find ways, whether it's through, you know, in smaller organizations, whether through talking, through engagement. As larger, I do think technology can come into play and really help in those factors. Is beginning to find that middle ground. We predominantly use something called co-design, which is my research background's in it. So it's all about user-centered design, placing the user at the center of that design process. So how you do that and how you use methodologies to achieve that. And I think that's really important to do, because I think people who approach this for the first time can fall into one of those two traps at either end. And it's about finding that common middle ground, whether it's small or whether it's large, and how you do that. And I think technology can allow you to do it how it's changed, but there's still a core fundamental area that needs to be tackled there.
I know, Helen, you had a point you wanted to make around this.
Yeah, well, it's a bit, it falls into both what Chris has just said and before about the apprenticeships. I was going to raise it with our apprentices. We give them a range of opportunities. In the company, we move them around the departments, but also give them opportunities that are a bit different and take them out of the business as well. We sent one young gentleman who works in procurement off to one of our exhibitions to have a go at perhaps talking to customers, taking some video testimonials and things like that. So just a completely different experience. Now, we tried to support him to make sure he understood what was needed and give him some training on the equipment and talk to him about how to approach people. And he come back and it was okay. He gave it a good go. But what he did realise is that he didn't want to be a customer-facing person. So the opportunities we've given them, I think, with the younger apprentices, is really helping them along the way, as well as figuring out who they are and what they want to do and how their personal journey will develop with them, and actually what other support and things they might need along the way to do a role that they're perhaps more comfortable with. So actually learning what you don't like as well as what you do like, and what suits you and what support and needs you need for that, is a big thing for PI-KEM as well. we're not scared of moving people around and changing things and trying different things with different people, obviously with all the conversations that go along with that and doing it carefully and considerately, but just seeing if somewhere different suits somebody better as well. Because just we say talk to people and ask them what they need and what they want, but Chris is quite right. Sometimes you'll only get one level of answer. If you put them in and have an experience, you can see different things are going on. So it covered both those points.
Brilliant, thank you. At this point, I'm realizing we're already just about a minute over our allotted hour. So I think I'm going to look to wrap it up. To any of our audience members, I haven't seen any questions in, but if anyone does have any questions, we are just going to still be around for a couple of minutes, and we're happy to answer any questions there might be coming in. I suppose just before I do the thank yous to everyone, I've just got a question for each of you, just from like a short answer from each of you on this. I mean, so if we're looking at embracing diversity and we're recognizing that is going to have a real beneficial impact to our workforce as a whole, and the output of the business, how do we create an inclusive culture?
That's a difficult one to answer quickly, Ben. I think, do you know what I think it is? And I think it comes on the back of like accepting that everybody's different, accepting that everybody will be different, will bring different skills, will bring different strengths, and embracing that difference. And I think based on kind of coming back to, what do you need? And from what Chris is saying, you do need to have an internal driver to make that cultural change as well. And in the smaller organizations, that can be on conversations, but I absolutely see the benefit in having data driving that first change, because C-suites like numbers, they like metrics, they like to see what is going to change that. So if you can balance all of your sales pitches internally to make this difference backed up with data and statistics, it will make a massive change to changing that culture in your org.
Thank you, Emma. So for my remaining three, I mean, what would your key aspect be?
I liked what Helen, I think Helen said it about equity in the workplace and trying to drive forward the fact that difference is good, right? Bringing that into play and bringing it in and making sure it's not a kind of us and them scenario. So I think it's different people bring different aspects, and a company is a company of people. So trying to bring that into play and realizing the realization and the understanding of the differences that can make. But as Emma said as well, very difficult to sum up in a short sentence.
I'm not trying to trap anyone here.
For me, it is about the team. It's about all of us, and it's all about being practical. That actually, we're not just saying this; we're doing it, and there's some evidence that we're doing it to build the trust. And there is a little bit of data. Our retention rates are a bit of data about it. So seeing the data that you can find and using that to back it up.
Yeah, for me, it's very much about kind of links in with everything, I guess. It's short and sweet about the acceptance and understanding from every side. And hopefully then, everything else will kind of come from that, and it'll have that domino effect. Brilliant.
So I guess to sum it up, we've mentioned these words a bit before. It's equity, not equality. We're not all going to be performing exactly at the same level and in the same way, but we can all be on the same pitch. Teamwork makes the dream work, I guess. Can I just say thank you all. Really enjoyed this time. Thank you for giving us your insight and expertise. Emma Kearns from Rangam, Laura Hateley from the Training Initiative, Chris Golby from Lumien, and Helen Brazington from PI-KEM. Thank you very much. To our audience, this is the end of our first webinar on neurodiversity. We are now going to be running webinars each month. I'm hoping Dylan's going to just put us up a little banner about our next one. Our next webinar is focusing on effective leadership and management within a business. How do we support our workforce to build the future leaders of our workforce? That's on the 23rd of May, 3 p.m. till 4 p.m. Hopefully you'll join us, and hopefully you'll be sharing that with other people. Thanks again to my panel. I'll speak to you all soon. Take care.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.